with every single variant, there's there's very, I would say, outside of arguably a very flawed system, there's a lot of incredible scientific and engineering work being done in constantly developing new, like, antiviral drugs, new vaccines to deal with the variants. So they're happily being a capitalist machine, and it's very difficult to know what to do with that.
Yeah. And let's just put this in perspective for folks. The best-selling drug in the world has been Humira for a number of years. It's approved for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis and 8 other indications. And it's sold about $20 billion globally over the past few years. It leveled out. It peaked at that level. Pfizer expects to sell $65 billion of vaccine in the first 2 years of the pandemic. So this is by far the biggest selling and most profitable drug that's ever come along.
Can I ask you a difficult question here? In the fog that we're operating in here, on the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, what was done well and what was done badly that you can see now? It seems like we'll know more decades from now.
Yes.
But now, in the fog of today, with the $65 billion flying around, where do you land?
So we're going to get to what I think is one of the key problems with the pharmaceutical industry model in the United States about being profit-driven. So in 2016, the NIH did the key infrastructure work to make mRNA vaccines. That gets left out of the discussion a lot. And Pfizer BioNTech actually paid royalties voluntarily to the NIH. I don't know how much it was. I don't think it was a whole lot of money, but I think they wanted to avoid the litigation that Moderna got itself into by just taking that 2016 knowledge and having that be the foundation of their product. So Pfizer took that and they did their R&D. They paid for their R&D, having received that technology. And when they got the genetic code from China about the vaccine, about the virus, they very quickly made a vaccine, and the vaccine works. And President Trump, to his credit, launched Operation Warp Speed and just threw money at the problem. They just said, we spent 5 times more per person than the EU early on. Just pay them whatever they want. Let's just get this going. And Americans were vaccinated more quickly. We paid a lot of money. The one mistake that I think the federal government made was they were paying these guaranteed fortunes, and they didn't require that the companies participate in a program to do global vaccinations. So the companies, doing their business model, distributed the vaccines where they would make the most money. And obviously, they would make the most money in the first world. And almost all, I think 85% of the vaccines early on went to the first world. And very, very few vaccinations went to the third world. So what happened is there was such a low vaccination rate. In May of 2021, there was all hands on deck cry for help from the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the IMF, and the World Bank made a plea for $50 billion so that we could get to 40% vaccination rate in the third world by the end of 2021. And it was unrequited. Nobody answered. And now Africa has about a 8.9% vaccination rate. India's coming up, but it's been very low. The problem with all this is I believe those mRNA vaccines are excellent vaccines. But if we leave the third world unvaccinated, we're going to have a constant supply of variants of COVID that are going to come back into the United States and harm Americans exactly like Delta and Omicron have. So we've made a great drug. It reduces the risk of mortality in Americans who get it by a lot, but we're not doing what we need to do to protect Americans from Omicron. You don't have to be an idealist and worry about global vaccine equity. If you're just ordinary selfish people like most of us are, and you're worried about the health of Americans, you would ensure global vaccine distribution. Let me just make one more point. That $50 billion that was requested by the four organizations back in May of 2021, 32 billionaires made $50 billion from the vaccines at that point, took it into their private wealth. So what had been taken, this enormous amounts of money that had been taken into private wealth was enough to do what those organizations said needed to be done to prevent the subvariants from coming back and doing what they're doing.
So the money was there, but how does the motivation, the money-driven motivation of big pharma, lead to that that kind of allocation of vaccines?
Because they can make
more money in the United States.
Yeah, they're going to distribute their vaccines where they can make the most money.
Right. Is there a malevolent aspect to this where, boy, I don't like saying this, but that they don't see it as a huge problem that variants will come back to the United States?
I think it's the issue we were talking about earlier on, where they're in a different culture. And their culture is that their moral obligation, as Milton Friedman would say, is to maximize the profits that they return to shareholders.
Yeah, and don't think about the bigger picture.
The collateral damage. Don't think about the collateral damage.
And also kind of convince yourself that if we give into this capitalist machine, in this very narrow sense of capitalism, that in the end, they'll do the most good. This kind of belief that, like, if we just maximize profits, we'll do the most good.
Yeah, that's an orthodoxy of several decades ago. And I don't think people can really say that in good faith. When you're talking about vaccinating the third world so we don't get hurt, it's a little bit hard to make the argument that the world's a better place because the profits of the investors went up.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that's a belief you can hold. I mean, I've interacted with a bunch of folks that kind of, I don't want to mischaracterize Ayn Rand, okay? I respect a lot of people, but it's a belief that can take hold. If I just focus on this particular maximization, it will do the most good for the world. The problem is when you choose what to maximize and you put blinders on, it's too easy to start making gigantic mistakes that have a big negative impact on society. So it really matters what you're maximizing.
Right. And if we had a true democracy and everybody had one vote, everybody got decent information and had one vote, Ayn Rand's position would get some votes, but not many. Mm-hmm. And it would be way outvoted by the common people.